Hello, it's me, Johanna, and I'm back here today to do Business 5.4, which is all about location. So, we'll be talking about factors that could either lead you to choose where to locate your business or where to relocate your business. So, the first factor that you may think about, and that probably comes to mind, is cost. So, this could be the cost of the land, or the cost of labor, or the cost of transport, because obviously you might want to be closer to your market or further away from your market, depending on how much it costs to transport the goods you're producing. Or you might need talented workers, and this may be hard to find, and you might have to pay higher salaries depending on what location you're at. And land, obviously, you might need a flat surface or a bumpy surface or whatever the case may be. So the next possible factor is competition. So essentially with competition, you have to think, where are my rivals located? Because you want a balance between the gaps in the market and also being not so far away from your competitors. This could be, it could also be bad, but it could be good, because if you all, like you and all your competitors, all end up in the same area, it might become known for that specific thing. I'm sure you know, for instance, like a food court. If you're set up right next to all the other food courts, more people are going to travel through that area because it's for food, and they are very likely to choose your restaurant or any other one. If you do this with your own store, like your own chains or brands, this is called cannibalistic marketing. That's, for instance, why like every McDonald's has like another McDonald's very near, or like Burger King. Like there are a bunch of Burger Kings in the same place, or like a bunch of espresso houses in the same place. It's because you are creating an area that is now known for that. The next factor is type of land. So not only will different types of land cost different things, for instance, the book uses a really good example where they mention a ski resort might have been like super popular, and then a bunch of climate change stuff happens, so it won't really work as a ski resort anymore. Now the next factor is markets. So this is basically about knowing where your customers are and setting up stores near your customers. But obviously now we have like online stores and stuff like that, so this factor might not be as important for all types of businesses. So familiarity with the area could also be important, because as an owner, if you're familiar with an area, you might already know the local network, so you'll know like possible suppliers or customers. You also know the culture very well, which will make it easy to set up and advertise, potentially. Then there is the labor pool. So you set up a location that you know has the type of workers you need. So if you need highly educated people, you might set up in like a university town or something, something with like very educated people. And if you need less skilled workers, you might find like another area that typically has less skilled workers. Then there is infrastructure. So infrastructure refers to transport networks. It could also be referring to electronic networks. But for like transport, you need to make sure that the country you're in or the place you're in has roads and has maybe you need a train, maybe whatever the case may be, it has the things you need to be able to transport your goods. So knowing where suppliers are, but also knowing that they're reliable, could be good help for your business. So you could choose your location based off that. This is even more crucial if you're using a just-in-time system, which we spoke about in the previous video, the 5.3 video. You can go watch that if you want, because then you need your equipment or materials or whatever, you need them instantly. So having reliable suppliers is crucial. So the last factor that will be on this little spider diagram, mind map, whatever you call them, is government. So here you have to think about the laws of the country. So that could be labor laws or health laws or safety regulation, rules on advertisements, any other law that pertains to your business. This is super important. And then there's also taxes, which is the amount of money a business is liable to pay in tax to the government. And obviously, depending on where you locate, especially if you look at different countries, they can have higher or lower taxes. So there are two new terms you come across in this chapter that have to do with the factor of costs. So there is bulk increasing and bulk decreasing. So bulk increasing means that the final product is bigger than its parts. For example, a car. You have a wheel is smaller than the final product of a car. And when you have a situation like this, it is very helpful to put your business close to the market, so close to your customer, because in transporting a car is way harder than transporting a wheel. So you have to sort of think about transportation costs. Then when you think about bulk decreasing, that's when the final product is smaller than its parts. For example, sausage, you have a pig that is bigger. Okay, that was a really dark example. And here I wrote chicken wings, sort of the same sense of like a chicken is bigger than the chicken wing. That's really sad. But then you should be close to the source, because obviously transporting something smaller is easier than bigger. So if you're close to the source, the chickens, then when you kill them and all that stuff. I'm a vegetarian, by the way, but anyhow, that's not important. Then transporting the actual chicken wings will cost less. So that could also be important. Now we're going to talk about the impact of globalization. So there is a theory here that has pull factors and push factors. So pull factors are external factors that are pushing you to globalize. So the first one is improved communication. Nowadays, when we have technology and also are very educated in different languages and stuff like that, it's become way more easy to communicate, which could be a reason to, if you have been holding yourself back from globalization, this could be a really good reason to do that, because now you can communicate with people in a way easier way. Then there is the dismantling of the trade barriers. Essentially, more than 3/4 of the world's countries have agreed to the World Trade Organization. So essentially, this means that you are reducing trade barriers, which makes it way more easy to trade across all over the place. You can trade to China, you can trade to America, you can trade to Sweden, you can trade to, I'm just saying random countries. I'm probably saying like some of the countries that don't work to trade in, maybe, I don't know. But essentially it's way easier to trade, so that could basically be an external factor that has been changing when it comes to globalization, which makes it way easier. Then there is the deregulation of the world's financial markets. Essentially what this means is that you can transfer money in easier ways, especially now that they have like online banking and stuff like that. It has become so much easier. So let's say you are originally from Finland. It's going to be very easy for you to have a business in a different country, because now you can transfer the money in an easy way. This last thing is a bit of a weird point, but it's essentially increasing sizes of multinational companies will make it easier for you to have a multinational company because of its influence, and the country will see how successful it is and how much money it is bringing the country, and the country will be like, yeah, good, you can set up here. Essentially, that's what they're talking about, but a very strange point, in my opinion. But I guess, yeah, sure. Except you'll have competition. But yeah. So then there are push factors, which are internal. So the first one is that you can reduce costs. This could be by moving to a country that has less tax and achieving financial economies of scale, or you might move closer to the raw material, or you go to a country with cheaper labor, stuff like that. Then there is increased market share. So essentially you tap into a new market when you enter a new country, because now you have this group of people who may have never seen your products before, but now they want to buy them. There are obviously some disadvantages to this, for instance, language barriers and also like cultural clashes you can have, but I'll get to that later. There's also such a thing as called a first mover's advantage, and obviously if you were the first person in that market to move to that country, you will have the most customers because nobody else will be doing what you're doing. So the next two things are strategies. So the extension strategy is from the life cycle model. So your product may have reached its like end station, like you've gotten all the customers you could with it, but then you use an extension strategy to try and extend the time, and that could be entering a new market, or for instance adding healthy foods to the McDonald's menu. That's the example they use in the book, so that's the one I'm going to tell you about. Yeah, okay. So the last one is the defensive strategy, and essentially what this is you move to another country not because you necessarily want to, but because you want to do it before competitors. This is sort of the first mover advantage I mentioned before, that you're sort of beating competition by getting there first. So the last part of this chapter is about outsourcing and offshoring. So outsourcing is the practice of using another business to complete part of your work. This could be in any area, like you could do it in HR, in, any area you want, but essentially what you're doing is you have a business that has core activities. Now, your core is like the main thing your business does. So for instance, if you are an airline, your core thing is moving people from one country to the next, And then there are other things which are peripheral activities, which are essentially like, for instance, the catering on an airline, or I can't think of anything other than that, but like essentially how they sell you everything, and it's like super expensive. They're like, do you want a glass of water? That will be $10. I don't know. But that's essentially a peripheral activity they do in airlines. So that's sort of what that is. You're basically giving another business the peripheral activity so that you can focus on your business. So then there is offshoring, which offshoring is essentially outsourcing outside of your home country. So instead of just moving it to another business, you're like another business in another country. So both of these stuff, like outsourcing and offshoring, they both have the same advantages and disadvantages, but offshoring has a couple extra disadvantages that we will be discussing. So the advantages are that it can reduce costs. For instance, maybe taxes in the other country is less, or you can fire your employees and you don't have to pay for their salaries, but that's sort of harsh. You can focus on your core activities, which will most likely mean that your quality will improve of your product. You will have improved your capacity utilization, and it can also lead to a transfer of expertise. So essentially, if you can focus on your main business, you can only have employees that are really, really qualified for that, which obviously will increase the quality as well and all of that stuff. Now, some of the disadvantages are that the business will become more dependent on the suppliers, which again, if you don't have reliable suppliers, this could be like super terrible. The business will also have less control of their final product, or the business like as a whole, because you're not doing every single aspect. Someone could potentially ruin your reputation since you are not doing all of the activities of your business. Someone could really mess up, and that could be really bad for your business. Now, specifically for offshoring, even more disadvantages are that there may be cultural differences between the companies, which can lead to these culture clashes, and maybe you accidentally offend someone, potentially. The communication can be could be really difficult if you don't speak the same language or if you're not in the same time zone. However, technology and stuff, you should probably be fine. There may be issues when it comes to ethics or quality, because maybe you have different standards in your company or in your country than in the other country. You might say, oh, we have a minimum wage, we pay our workers this much, they only get to work like 6 hours, but then in the other country they're like, no, they work 10 hours and for less pay. So there could be some ethical issues. So recently, especially with Corona and also with the environmental issues, it's become very common to start doing in-housing and reshoring. So in-housing is essentially starting to do your peripheral activities again. You're taking it back. Okay, the thing you let the other business do, you want it back. And the advantages and disadvantages for both of these things are essentially the opposite of the disadvantages and advantages I said before. Like if you flip them. So essentially, one of the disadvantages I said is that you become more dependent on suppliers. So for the advantage of this is you become less dependent on your suppliers. So you just flip them from what I mentioned before. You will also gain full control. You might reduce like transportation costs, since you won't have to transfer from far away or from another country. Well, I mean, this is in-housing, so it's not necessarily from another country, right? Or but still. So then there is reshoring, which is essentially moving your stuff back to your home country. What this does is basically it creates jobs in the country that you live in, which will probably support your community, and they'll be very happy about that. The government will probably be very happy with you. So that was it for 5.4 locations. So thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to subscribe, like, and comment. I will be making more business videos as well as videos for other subjects. So please subscribe, stay tuned, and you can follow me at Johanna Frennert if you want. Goodbye! I hope you learned something.